What is up, my aspiring realtors that probably couldn't sell me a square inch off my own butt cheek, and welcome back to another episode of Getting Baked, the official baked goods podcast. Today we have another episode of the Uncle Greg mini-series, because my Uncle Greg has probably played Monopoly before, so this video might apply to him, I guess. If you want a more in-depth on what exactly the Uncle Greg mini-series is, I explain it at the beginning of my Weird Al songs podcast, so maybe just go watch that video if you want an actual explanation. Today we're going to be talking about Monopoly and I guess board games in general. So I like board games. I've wanted to talk about them on my channel for a while. I have a shelf behind me with about 50 board games on it, and these are probably not the board games you're thinking of. You might be thinking of Monopoly, Life, Scrabble, Sorry, Clue, Trouble, Candyland, Risk, Yahtzee, Hungry Hippos, for all I know. This list could go on for a long time. These games all have their own merits, I guess, but I'm talking about a different kind of game. So this video was originally going to be me just taking a fat dump on why I thought Monopoly was a hot pile of rubbish. And I had a conversation about this with a good friend of mine, and they told me this was a bad idea. They said, if I'm trying to convert people to my cult religion, I shouldn't have my opening pitch be a rant about why their religion sucks. And for many people, Monopoly is their favorite game, maybe even the only game they know how to play. Maybe they play with their family every Sunday, and it's a special ritual for them. Whatever. That's fine. The best part about board games is that there are so many out there. There's something for everyone. And if you like Monopoly, that is great. My brother-in-law loves Monopoly, and he's one of the most tactical, ruthless strategists I know. And he's also a high school gym teacher, so it makes sense. And I could sit here pretending that I'm more smarter than all the moon poop peasants because their game sucks. But to be honest, me and my friends frequently play a game called Killer Bunnies, and frankly, a lot of my criticisms of Monopoly also applied to this game. So I guess the point should be that it doesn't matter what you play, as long as you're having fun. Games transport you to entirely different worlds. They let you pretend to be whoever you want to be. They can let you do whatever you want within the context of the rules. No cheaters allowed. And for however long they last, they can fill you with a wide array of emotions. Maybe you get joy when you somehow roll a 12 and get your precious sheep. You feel anger when someone steals your precious sheep on the next turn. Betrayal when they use that sheep to buy a dev card, and sadness when that dev card is a victory point and they win the game off of that, or whatever. So we play games for many reasons, and the entire point of this video is going to be why I play games. So I'm glad you asked, internet person. Let me tell you why. It all comes down to this handy dandy mnemonical acronym, whatever, the STD. Yes, this entire video is centered around that gag. So what does STD stand for? Well, board games are social, tangible, difficult, and different. And I guess I'll unpack what each of these letters mean. So social. Board games are social. They let you interact with other humans. Imagine that. It's so beautiful when I get a group of my friends together and we can sit around a table and actually look each other in the eye instead of just staring at our phones. And I love Jackbox games, but sometimes it can feel like you're interacting with your phone more than the other players. So the first board game I ever got was a game called One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which is kind of a spin on the like Werewolf Mafia games, if you've ever played those. And that game is basically 15 minutes of you and your friends lying to each other's faces, and that is just an incredible experience. So a lot of the first board games I had in my collection were about heavy player interaction and lying. And I know that won't be for everyone, but if this sounds like something you might like. Games like Resistance and Coup would be great for you because those are all about just bluffing and lying and trying to read the other players and figure out who's telling the truth and who's not, stuff like that. And of course, there are games with interaction that don't have lying. There are games about heavy negotiation, I guess, like Monopoly. You could trade in that game. A game I have that's a really good example of this is called Sidereal Confluence, which is a game that's about as complicated as the name would suggest. And that is about trading different colored cubes with the other players. I have 3 green cubes and you have 2 blue cubes in an octagon. Would you like to maybe trade so we both get what we want? It's an interesting setup there, but games are social, and that is great because they actually let you interact with people in a non-digital sense. That's one of the reasons I love board games. The next reason is the T. They are tangible. Board games are physical things. They come in a box that you hold and you carry and you unpack and you have to set it up and all that jazz. And that is one reason that I connect with them more than I connect with most video games. I did a podcast on my favorite Wii games from my childhood. I think back in like December or something. Go check that out. Maybe I'll put like a little card up here in the top right corner. Maybe I'll forget. Who knows? And I tend to relate more with board games because they're real. Like both video games and board games, like you put them in a box and they go on your shelf, except in the video game box, it's a disc that you have to like put into a TV, and the game only like exists inside that TV screen. Whereas board games, like I have games with hundreds of pieces that like you can touch and put in your hand, and there's something about that realness that really vibes with me. And another thing about this is board games are beautiful. They are an art form. I have a bunch of games that I could probably like put the cards on my wall with thumbtacks and it would improve the decor in my room. I have a game called Root, which is like about woodland creatures fighting for control of a forest, and the art is just amazing for that game. I have a game called Wingspan, which is about birds and building an aviary. There are 230 different bird cards in that game. All of them have unique art, and it's absolutely stunning to look at and just appreciate. I have a game called Unmatched, which is about it's basically historical Mortal Kombat, and it's kind of like if Epic Rap Battles of History was a board game, and that there's just some stunning graphic design in there. And of course, I have another game called Azul, which has these like starburst like little like tiles that you like lay across your board and you collect and you pick up, and that all of this just like makes the entire board game experience better for me because I have something that's real, I have something that's beautiful, I can touch it, it's tactile, and that just vibes with me a lot. The first D in STD is they are difficult. They challenge me. They provoke a lot of thought in my brain. They make me think in different ways depending on each game. And a lot of these games are really hard. Of course, not all of them are, and usually you can adjust the difficulty in them. But some games just will beat you down, and it's amazing when me and my friends lose a game, and then we're like entrapped in this conversation for 20 minutes after the game ends about what we could have done differently, different things that could have happened, and like just thinking about the experience really shows like how much thought you put in, you just get out that much. So I have a game called Dead of Winter, which is about all the players controlling different survivors in a colony in the middle of a harsh winter in a zombie apocalypse. And there are so many things that you have to balance, like food, too many zombies outside, the trash piling up, you have to complete different objectives. It is a hard game, and the game usually will beat every last drop of hope out of you, but it is just such an interesting experience because it's like a puzzle and you have to figure out how to solve the puzzle. there's a game I have called Shadows over Camelot, which is about me and my friends being knights of the round table, and again, it's a similar situation where we have to go on different quests in order to have the forces of good prevail, but one of us might be a secret betrayer trying to have evil win, and that is just such a stressful environment because you're trying to plan everything out, but one of you might not even be on the same team. And of course, there's a game I have called Catan, which was originally going to be the main contender for taking the throne from Monopoly. But this game is hard. It's a lot of math, actually. And I like math. I like thinking about the different numbers involved and the dice rolls and different resources that they provide and stuff like that. And it's a lot of thinking. And thinking is good. I know everyone has like a nice mobile phone dopamine device, but every now and then it's good to just stop mindlessly scrolling through endless feeds of social media and think. Use your brain. And the second D in STD is board games are different. Very rarely will two board games provide the same experience, and because there's so many, there is something for everyone. There are like 2-player games where you're just battling another player. There's party games where you could play with 30 people. And no two genres will ever be alike. So I have just a bunch of pairings of board games that have similar themes but play very differently. So for two I've already mentioned, both Wingspan and Root have birds in them, but both are wildly different in execution. Wingspan is a nice kind of like engine builder where you get a bunch of birds that let you do more things, so you become more powerful as the game grows. Whereas Root is a nice war game where you play as different factions battling for a forest. Vampires. Two games I have are Horrified and Fury of Dracula. Fury of Dracula is where one person takes control of Dracula and is stealthily running around Europe while the other 4 players play as vampire hunters trying to catch him on a map, except Dracula's movement is hidden from the other players. So they're trying to like basically cast a net over all of Europe to try to find the hidden vampire. And then Horrified is actually a cooperative board game. Imagine that. Everyone's working together against the game. Where you fight the universal monsters like the Mummy, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Invisible Man, and of course, Dracula. I have 2 games about, actually I have 3 games for this one, about food. I have a game called Sushi Go, which is about sushi. I have a game called Abandon All Artichokes, which is about a bunch of vegetables ganging up on these poor artichokes, and a game called New York Slice, which is about dividing up a pizza between you and your friends. All of these games are wildly different from each other, even though they're all about food. And lastly, King Arthur. These are 2 games that I've already talked about. Unmatched and Shadows over Camelot. Shadows over Camelot, of course, being a difficult game where one of you might be a traitor and one of you can play as King Arthur and the other people are Knights of the Round Table. And in Unmatched, one player can actually play as King Arthur and battle anyone from history, like Medusa, Sinbad the Sailor, Alice from Alice in Wonderland, the raptors from Jurassic Park, Bruce Lee, Bigfoot, Robin Hood, like the list goes on and on. So obviously, there's so many different board games. They provide so many unique experiences, and it's just there's something for anyone. And so to try to give you actually something, we're going to go back to Monopoly, because I would say you've probably heard of Monopoly at some point. It's probably the most mass marketed game. It has a wide array of different themes to play, like SpongeBob, Game of Thrones, Bob's Burgers, etc. So it comes in a bunch of different flavors, and there's a ton of different versions, like the cheater version, the millennial version, the millionaire version, whatever. So obviously this game is everywhere. and everyone knows it. And so my goal from here is maybe to just convince you to try a game that isn't Monopoly. And maybe you'll discover that there's like a whole world of, I would say, more modern board games that you might discover and find that you love and enjoy them. So I'm going to give you a bunch of recommendations based on Monopoly. And all of these games are games that I have taught or could teach to my mom. So you're in luck. They're not going to be super difficult. You should be fine. And also, please feel free to ask questions in the comment section of this video. I would be very happy to help you find something you like or even answer any questions you have about these. So the first game is going to be Catan. This is another like economic development game against you and other players, and it has dice rolling just like Monopoly, so you should feel right at home. I feel that Catan better uses the luck in this game to turn it into strategic propositions instead of deciding the game based on who lands on what property. But that's, I guess, an argument for a different video. There's a ton of stuff going on in Catan. There's trading, there's stealing, there's building. It's just a really good game to take a step up from Monopoly. I'd say the rules are pretty simple, and it's just a well-designed game, in my opinion. The next game is Power Grid. This is another game very similar to Monopoly in the fact that it's kind of like a resource development economy kind of game where you and the other players are controlling different power grids across the United States, or I guess Germany, depending on what map you're playing. And there's a bunch of different maps for this game, but and basically there's different power plants you can buy in bids from like the game where you compete with the other players, and each of them use different resources to power a certain number of cities, and you have to like buy certain cities on the board. And it's very strategic because there's very limited chance in this game. Almost everything is impacted by you and the other players, and the turn order matters a lot, and being able to kind of like maneuver where you're going to go in the turn order, because it changes in each round, can give you some benefits or disadvantages that will change how the game progresses. There's a lot to think about in this game. It's definitely a little bit more complex than Catan, but it is another great step away from Monopoly. Ticket to Ride is another really simple game about America. You and the other players are traveling across the U.S. or building train routes. I'm not entirely sure. The theme isn't that great in this game, but it's about trains in America, and you're trying to complete routes with your train cars across the United States, but there's only so many train tracks, so you have to try to put your trains down before other players. It's a very simple rule set. I could probably teach it in under 10 minutes. There's only 3 things or 3 options you can do on your turn, and it's about trains. Who doesn't love trains? And the last game I will say that is directly similar to Monopoly is called Dominion. This is a deck building game, which is very different than other genres of card games. Basically, you maintain and use this small deck of cards throughout the game, but you can add cards to it, and every turn you'll draw a hand of cards, and then at the end of your turn you'll discard them, and eventually your deck will run out. And when your deck runs out, you just shuffle your discard pile back together, and it becomes your new deck. So you basically have this endless cycle of cards that you're running through to try to buy new cards, and eventually you have to buy the most like victory point cards and win the game. This Dominion is about having money and about having property. So it's just like Monopoly, just very mechanically different. I guess that is a little bit of a bait, but there's a whole genre of deck building games. It's actually my favorite type of board game. Dominion is actually my favorite board game, so it's easy. Me and my mom play this all the time. She beats me every once in a while, but I would say this is another really solid step into modern board gaming. And I have a few more recommendations just cause, like, why not? Yeah, that's it. So those are all the recommendations I have for this video, and this is basically the end of this video. If you have any questions, it's twice in a row. Please, there we go. Feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to have a discussion. Love to answer any questions. Like I said, I love board games. I'm extremely passionate about this hobby, and I'm excited to start making more videos about them in the future. So thank you for watching. Play more games. Peace.